Welcome to the Coaches Show. I'm Darrin Joins, Williamson County Schools Athletic Director, and today we have a very special guest. It's a new and old face to WCS, head football coach at Ravenwood High School, Coach Will Hester. Coach, welcome back to WCS. Welcome back to the Coaches Show.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. It's a face that gets older every year, I guess.
Well, I was kind of questioning my wording there, but you're getting older, Coach.
Absolutely.
Coach, let's talk a little bit about where you've been the past few years, the past 3 seasons in Florence, Alabama, 16-16 record during that time, including, I believe in your second year, a second-round playoff loss, a tough 38-31 game to eventual champion in the 7A playoffs. Before that, obviously the folks in WCS know this, but 2-year stint at Nolensville, you started the program up, first playoff appearance and win, and I believe with no seniors in the program at the time. And then before that, a 3-year run at Ravenwood, 38-4 record, state runner-up to Maryville in 2014. 2015, you returned the favor with the state championship again over Maryville. Did I knock it out of the park or what?
That's
Coach?
pretty good, man. Your history lesson is a good one.
So, I was thinking about this. So it's the prodigal son.
I don't know about all that. The best part of it is my parents have always and still live across the street from Ravenwood High School, and that's a big reason to come back and be close to them. And like I said, my mom's probably one of the 3 people that watches your show. So,
yes, she is. And she's a fact checker.
She is a fact checker. She'll make sure you and Tate aren't lying on people. So,
so let me ask you this: you said they lived across from Ravenwood. Did they live there when it wasn't Ravenwood?
Oh yeah, your boy Chip Cirillo and his story about me shooting.
How did I forget?
Shooting rabbits in the field that was Ravenwood High School when I was growing up. So yeah, my parents have always lived there as long as we lived in Tennessee. So I moved here when I was in the 7th grade and my parents have been in that house ever since.
Where were you at before?
Birmingham, Alabama before that.
So that's the Alabama connection.
Yep.
And what about Florence High School? Did you have a familiarity with that school before?
The community, my mother's a graduate of UNA, which was Florence State Teachers College back in those days, but I'd spent a lot of time there, and so it was a familiar place to us.
And then you attended, obviously, Brentwood High School.
Yep.
Had a relationship there with Coach Crawford.
Yeah, coached with Coach Crawford there, and obviously he wasn't the coach when I was playing because I'm too old. But
who was your coach?
John Ash was my coach.
Yes, he was.
Yep, the principal of Central Magnet School in Murfreesboro.
Let me ask you this, Coach. I mean, obviously you've been back since, and this usually happens with a football hire. It happens sort of middle of the year. You've been here for a little bit, and obviously you've been here before. Has it been a little bit different this time around? Does it feel special or more special this time around? And I asked Coach Crawford this question before because obviously he did the same thing at Brentwood, went to Cleveland, came back. So I'm curious what your thoughts are about being back. Does it feel exactly the same? Does it feel a little bit different, more special?
It feels very comfortable in a lot of ways. A lot of familiar faces. Obviously, Dr. Vaden is the only principal that Ravenwood has ever had, so that relationship is and always has been a good one, and enjoyed that. Andy Elrod, who's our athletic director, was a member of our staff when we were there previously. So Coach Whitlock, the basketball coach. So there's a lot of those faces that are familiar. I think maybe the expectations and the kind of air around Ravenwood is a little bit different. Back in those days, previously, we were kind of the underdog, at least starting out. We were coming, building a program back that had been down for a few years. Now we are, had a lot of success, just played in the state championship game 2 years ago. And, last year, by all's imagination, guys probably underachieved a little bit. Had some things not go their way, but, losing in the second round of the playoffs to Franklin was probably not where they expected the year to finish with the talent that was there. And so the kind of feeling around the program is different. Now we are the hunted instead of the hunter. So very familiar, feels very much the same, but in the end, I think is a different job than it was when I left.
Now listen, if you were selling that you were the hunter even your last time around, you and I were talking about this before. Think about this school now. This is year maybe 19 playing varsity, right? We talked about that. Coach Rector, state finals, lost, won in the championship game. You had the same deal. lost in the final, won, and then Coach Daniels obviously made it all the way to the finals. How were you selling? You were the hunter when even back then, Coach, you went for your third and fourth state championship game.
Well, I mean, there was a stretch there where they had won 9 games in 4 years previous to those 3 seasons. So, I mean, obviously there had been some success before, and winning has been a big part of Ravenwood in all sports. I mean, their tennis and track and field and girls and boys soccer have been dominant, since the school's inception.
Yeah.
So, as a coach, we always enjoy playing the underdog role. Sure. So we took that advantage of the years previous and did that. Obviously, by 2015, people probably looked at us a little bit differently. But I do think, with the success that they've had recently, that we're in a different airspace now than we were back then, too.
Sure. Coach, we talked about those ties to the county as a coach. Obviously worked with Coach Crawford, graduated from Brentwood High School. As I was thinking about the show today, it's got to be a little bit interesting or different for you, because to me, that's one of the most bitter rivalries in the state. Brentwood-Ravenwood. I don't care what you're playing. If Brentwood and Ravenwood play, it's pretty heated. But you have a different perspective maybe. Went to school at Brentwood, head coach at Ravenwood. What's that like? I mean, do you still have a soft spot in your heart for Brentwood High School, or are you over it?
Well, I'm over it. But, I mean, the funny thing about it is the rivalry for me as a student there is Franklin. It's not Ravenwood. That didn't exist, right? And a lot of the old-time people, even after Ravenwood, would say that Franklin was the biggest rival and that Ravenwood was the little brother and all that kind of stuff. So, obviously, I'm using the word Brentwood more now in this show than I ever will. We don't even speak of that name around our facility. So, but what's fun to me is Clint Finch was a member of our staff at Ravenwood the first time. He was on the state runner-up staff. Then Coach Crawford comes back, and he goes back to Brentwood as his offensive coordinator to take that opportunity. Alex Melton, Clint Finch, and myself, all 3 were on the same staff at Brentwood High School for Ron Crawford. Now, we're all 3 head coaches in the same league competing against each other. So what's interesting to me is the more the league changes, in essence, the more it becomes similar in the fact that, all of us know each other so well. And, there are really no magical plays or magic. Everybody's doing the same stuff. I mean, the majority of the teams in our league are all running very similar defenses. They all run very similar quarterback-driven offenses. In the end, it's going to be all about who kind of builds that belief and self-confidence in their team, the culture, if you will, around their program that's going to lead to the success. But, I think maybe Tom Kreger tweeted out last night even that 7-6A is probably the toughest region in all of Tennessee high school football. I would 100% agree with that, especially with the loss of Dixon County and now the addition of Summit. And you bring the state champion of the one class below up who returns a ton of football players. So I'm super excited about coaching this league this year, and not to mention getting to play the alphabet soup of the privates in our non-league games. It makes for a very exciting year.
Well, and we talked about, Tate and I talk about this all the time. I don't even think you can argue, especially now with Summit coming in, that this is, obviously Oakland, if you want to compare, just talk about counties now. If you want to talk about Williamson County, Rutherford County, obviously Oakland's been dominant, right? Yep. You take them out, it's not close.
Well, I would even say leave them in, right? So if you leave them in, okay, maybe you can say they're one.
Sure.
We'll even let them have that. They were dominant last year, beat Brentwood in the finals. They won the big cross-county game last year. But then I would dare say 2 through 6 or 7 would be all Williamson County schools.
We win every game.
So, both of them play great football. I wish, personally, that maybe the 2 athletic directors from the 2 counties get together and make it a deal where non-league games are played cross-county, thinking of travel and gates and the excitement built by those games. Could you imagine every non-league game being against the Rutherford County School? Would be pretty make for some interesting matchups.
It would be fantastic. And, the thing I believe that happened a little bit last time when that was talked about, even with the Jamboree, some of the coaches got in the way a little bit in terms of worrying about losing. We don't want to play
of
them.
course.
We want to make sure we're not playing Ravenwood. Well, we want to make sure we're not playing Oakland. And I give your predecessor credit, Coach Daniels. He said, we'll play Oakland every time.
Yeah.
We don't care. And I'm sure you feel the same way.
Well, I mean, in the end, you're going to have to play them if you want to win the gold ball, right? So why run away from them in the regular? I can understand if you're trying to build a program, you're trying to establish something that isn't there. But right, wrong, or indifferent, the perception of Ravenwood football now is that they are year in, year out, one of the top few teams in the state of Tennessee, and so why shy away from that competition when you're going to have to be playoff ready when the time comes?
Coach, Battle of the Wood or Battle of the Woods?
Well, the trophy is made of wood. We've had this discussion before. So if you're
I'm
playing,
taking notes. This is for Tate.
if you're playing for something, it's a wooden trophy. So that would be the wood. You're playing for the wood. The city that we both inhabit doesn't end in S. That is, so if you're battling for the bragging rights in the single city, that would be singular. But if you're talking about the battle between the two schools that end in wood, then you got to throw the S in there. So I think it's semantics. What are we talking about? We battling for the trophy, we battling for the town, or are we battling between the schools?
I'm telling you, I say this all the time because I always say Woods. Tate says Wood, but I say we're both right. It was probably initially Wood, the Battle of Brentwood.
Yep.
But over time, the folks at Ravenwood aren't putting up with that. It's not the Battle of Brentwood, it's the Battle of Ravenwood-Brentwood.
And those people over there try to put an S in the middle of our name. So, we're going to throw an S on the end of theirs. I'm fine with that.
I love it. I love it. Coach, let's back up just a little bit. I want you to talk about your time at Nolensville. And that was a little different situation, obviously, than Ravenwood. And I think looking back on that, a lot of people were really surprised. You're coming off a state championship, only been there as a head coach 3 years, and then you leave and go to Nolensville to get this new start. Talk about, and I know we're talking about the present, but let's go back for our viewers that maybe don't know this story. Talk about how that all came about.
Yeah, I mean, so Nolensville was born out of Ravenwood High School. So Ravenwood gets to 2,200 students or thereabouts, and Williamson County at the time wanted all their high schools around 1,800. So that was extremely big, and I think we've made a decision to make them bigger at this point. But back then, that's what it was. So they built a new high school. It was the same community, which has made it very difficult for me. The opportunity to go over there and build something from scratch as the athletic director. Dr. Holland gave me a lot of opportunities in, helping build the culture of the entire school. I always kind of, thought that was something that I did pretty well was building culture, and he kind of allowed me to have some free reign with that with the entire school and to help hire all those coaches and design athletic facilities and pick things out. It was just an opportunity that I thought that I couldn't turn down. And then to be able to do it with a lot of, I guess my people, right? When you start something from scratch, you're not having to fill a singular position. You're building something, and you can get a lot of people that are like-minded as you and surround yourself with those people. So, there's some really good people over there that helped start that. And it was with our same kids, the same families that I'd been coaching. I was going to be coaching their younger siblings, depending on where they live geographically. So that was very comfortable as well. To do that. And, the most exciting thing for me was to have the opportunity to build it and then add a grade each year. I also was involved with starting Siegel High School as an assistant, and we had to start that with 4 grades starting out, and it was kind of miserable because all the kids that came that were in a senior or junior were running from something else. And so you're dealing with all the issues created by that. But when you have kids that the majority want to be there, and then you're adding a grade each year, it's a pretty cool situation. And, some of my fondest memories were during that time.
And obviously Coach Derrick was on the staff at the time. And when you look at the success of Nolensville, forget just football, but you look at the success and growth of that school, you have to have a little pride in that.
Absolutely. Obviously I didn't ever, be involved with playing a baseball game, and, the soccer programs have been very well. And Coach Shelton and I go way back to our Siegel days. He actually was on those staff that started Siegel High School when I did. Then to have for him to come over and do that same thing with us. I mean, those coaches have done a phenomenal job over there. and it was very exciting to see how the success that they've had, and it continues to grow. I mean, baseball still doing amazing things, and the football program has been to the semifinals the last few years, and just try to get over that hump and play one more week.
And as you see them moving up in levels for the different programs, you think they're ready for that?
Yeah, I mean, in essence, it might be an easier league personally.
Yeah.
I mean, that 4A league with Marshall County and Tullahoma and some predominantly strong teams in there. Now you go into the 5A league that's, lost the Summits, and, some of those programs have not had, great years over the last few. So, in essence, it may be a smoother road. The 5A road to the state has always been kind of a smoother travel road ever since the 6th classification was built. So, I'm excited to see what they do. A lot of talent on that team returning for Paul and those guys. And, that's definitely a score I'll be checking every Friday night.
And it allows you to still root for Nolensville since you're not.
Absolutely. Now, we would love to play them. But, it's probably in both of our best interests not for that to happen right now. But it won't be long, and they'll be in our league.
Right.
And, just like Page will be in our league. And, it'll probably be 2 leagues of Williamson County schools before long. But, everybody's growing, and it's going to be exciting to see everybody in the same league before long.
So your time finishes up there at Nolensville. You spend a couple of years there, and then you go to Florence, Alabama. Talk about how that all came about.
Well, I mean, the SEC adage that it just means more, I mean, it's very true. The farther south you drive, the more of an emphasis put on football. The state of Alabama, in my opinion, football is king in Alabama. You could argue that with some of the other sports in Tennessee, but I think hands down there's no question what's king in the state of Alabama. The 7A classification, there's going to be 4 or 5 teams in the preseason USA Today top 25 that we were competing against on a year in and year out basis. With the names of Talia Tungavaloa and all those kind of guys. Those are the kind of talents that you're playing each and every Friday night. So, when anybody who's involved in anything wants to see how they do things once they've had success, how does it translate to the very biggest stage? And that's what that is, in my opinion. That 7A league in Alabama is, as tough of high school football as it gets. We had a great time there. I thought, we had a lot of success and a lot of players to college. But in the end, home is home, and the opportunity to come back, kind of where, some of your best memories are, it's something we couldn't say no to.
So was it one of those things too, and I know I'm glad you mentioned there about the talent, because I've heard you talk about that in terms of level of talent, maybe not in terms of excitement, because we obviously have, to me, that's the thing that makes us so special here, the support from the fans, parents. But in terms of that talent week in and week out, hard to really compare.
Tennessee's gotten so much better from, if you look at kids that sign out of the area or whatever, Middle Tennessee now is kind of come a long way, even since 2015, right? Multiple kids will sign major Division I, Power 5 scholarships out of our league, out of our area. But the thing that kind of separates it is, if you look at it from a defensive line perspective, and we're talking about those guys, real big guys that can run really fast, really strong guys, you don't see any of those guys signing out of this area. But the farther south you go, those guys exist, and it changes the entire game. If you're an option football coach, you used to could read a guy and make a decision if I'm going to let the running back keep it or if the quarterback's going to keep it. Well, now that guy's 6'5", 300 pounds and fast enough to play both you guys. So you have to do things differently. You have to think about things differently. I personally think that the coaching is better in the state of Tennessee than the state of Alabama. And I say that because I think people lean on the talent more than they do the technique and the coaching behind the game. You see a lot of guys that do a lot with, I guess you would say, lesser talent in Tennessee and have a lot of success. Maryville has been a very good program, but the number of SEC caliber kids or Power 5 kids that have played in that program, you can almost count on one hand.
Yeah.
So the success and the program that they've built there, you don't see that in Alabama. You see runs of great players. So,
yeah, that's interesting, and I've heard you talk about that before. I wanted the folks out there watching to have a chance to hear you describe that. Fast forward again, Ravenwood comes open. is it one of those things that when you saw it come open, that you immediately said, and I know you were contacted, obviously, talk about that. Was it a pretty easy decision? Was it a, man, I can't believe I've got a chance to go back and do this? Talk about what your mindset was like when all this came about.
I mean, you think about what's going on, right? There's a pandemic going on in the world. You know, the older people in our families are the ones most at risk of something happening to them. And I am a long way away from my family or from my parents, right? And so, and my sister for that matter, she lives here too. So, you know, that was the biggest thing that I'm struggling with through that time frame, right? And then to have this opportunity, you know, Coach Daniels, same kind of thing, has some family stuff that's on his heart that he wants to look at doing differently. So it's kind of the perfect storm there. Super happy in Florence, probably the most enjoyable place I've ever lived. You know, we had a home that we loved, and friends and all those kinds of things. But in the end, the ability to get back to family and to do it at a place that we've had so much fun and enjoyment at working at. And, you know, my wife and I kind of look at this as our ministry of sorts, right? It isn't just a job. I'm not just a football coach. We try to truly pour into the kids in the community and you know, grow them into great human beings. And to do it at a place where we had done it before and it was going to be comfortable with people that we knew, it was something we couldn't pass up.
Well, and something else too, and I know again that's something people know about you. You're a guy that believes in the culture of the team. You're a guy that's a big part of the school. You go to a basketball game, you're going to be there. You go to a baseball game, you're going to be there. Go to girls soccer in the fall, you're going to be there when you can. Talk about, because you and I have talked about this before, Florence was kind of a commuter school, is it fair to say that? In terms of Friday nights, even though the talent out there may have been as good or better, the support and the energy around the game maybe wasn't quite the same. Now, obviously on the field it is, but I'm talking about fan-wise, community support. That looked a little different, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was different. You got to understand you're playing in a college stadium, right? Hosted the Division II National Championship for years. So a stadium that holds 20,000 is going to feel empty if it's got 5,000 in it. So, you know, what we do here, if you put that same crowd there, is going to feel like nobody's there. So, I mean, that kind of vibe made it tough. You know, it wasn't a high school feel to the game. The community supported us well. You know, they came out, they supported the program as well as they possibly could, you know, but it was a deal where kind of the opposite of Ravenwood and Owensville split. They took two schools and threw them together to make one. And I still think there's some animosity in how those schools were put together.
That's interesting. And again, it is kind of the polar opposite of what you have here. All right, let's talk a little bit about your team as we close out here. Obviously, you lost some big pieces in the program. Jake Brenningstool, who's at Clemson, Junior Colson at Michigan, Trevor Andrews, just to name a few. But the cupboard isn't exactly bare. You got the return of Miles Pollard, another Michigan commit. So Ravenwood has turned into this pipeline for Michigan, it looks like. Brendan Dickinson, Lee Millette. You've got some pieces who are returning for you.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of great pieces. I mean, you know, we probably have more guys that are going to have the opportunity to play college football on this team than we did in 2015. So, you know, very exciting to be able to coach those guys. Miles very clearly made a name for himself against IMG last year with a hit that everybody remembers and has kind of blown up deservedly so since then. Brendan Dickinson, who is a member of back-to-back state championship lacrosse teams, was a big piece as kind of that tight end fullback for us last year. And Lee Millette had many great games. And JT Smitherman, there's a long list of guys that played very well last year that are returning for us. And then you throw two transfer guys in, like a Chris Parson, who's a pretty decent quarterback, people say, and an offensive lineman, Carter Miller. Those guys both happen to be moving from different parts of Texas to our area. Chris actually played in the Blaze program as a young kid, and some of our dads had coached him when he was 7, 8 years old. So that family, very close to the Pollards, had lived in this community and took advantage of the opportunity to come back. So very talented group. If the coach cannot screw them up, we'll have a chance to be successful.
Well, the transfer portal, so to speak, not in a bad way, in a good way,
Yeah, we've been hit the other way too. Don't kid yourself.
has been pretty kind to Ravenwood. Let's talk about this, because I've noticed this since I've been here. When people move to this community, it seems like Ravenwood's in the mix a lot. Do you think it's because of that past success? Do you think?
So I love using the Riverdale analogy, and I'm an older guy, and so, Coach Reagan, the winningest coach in Tennessee high school history, used to really get blasted about, always having transfer kids and always that. But if you're a parent who's passionate about football, you have a child who's passionate about sports, you're going to do your due diligence and look around and then make a decision based off maybe where you can find a home, but also about the programs you're putting your kids in. So when you've been blessed enough to have a program that has some success, you're going to get more of those kids because people want to be a part of that. No offense to any of the other ones, because I think there's a bunch of great programs in our community. Obviously, we're talking about how difficult the league is, but, if you Google Tennessee high school football, the name Ravenwood is going to pop up in your search. So I do think we are the benefactors of some of that. Plus, it's a great community to live in. If you look at the zones, Ravenwood's zone is generally all residential. We don't have a commercial really piece to our zone, so we have more homes, more opportunities for people to move into. So, that's kind of the way I think it goes.
Well, I think part of it too. Coach Daniels was great at this. You've been great at it. The promotion of the program. When you take a look at the programs in the league, you guys do a great job of that.
Well,
G2 Bar, Raptor Fast. You have a great presence on Twitter when you're talking about people showing, here's what we're going to wear this week for the game. Ravenwood, you guys do an incredible job of that. I think it's part of it.
Well, obviously, you want to grow your brand, right? And everybody has one. Us as individuals have one. But, every program, every school, every team has one. And, you are what the information out there is about you to be. When a parent reaches out to us about our program, I tell them, go to YouTube, search Ravenwood football, go to Twitter, look at all those things. We are the information that's out there. So, growing your brand is a big deal.
Coach, as we wrap up here, talk about, I know we're just getting started. You were able to play some 7-on-7 before the dead period, and you're going to be involved here coming up, the Hustle Up National Championship. Tell our audience about that.
Yeah, we've been invited to go down to Hoover and compete with schools from all over the Southeast, as far away as Louisiana and South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, in a 7-on-7 competition in 2018. So excited to see how we stack up. In the end, it's going to be all great practice. Versus, fast kids running against fast kids catching balls. So it's going to be exciting, and I'm excited to see our kids compete. So.
And only 3 schools in our state will be a part of that.
There are 3 schools in our state, 2 in Middle Tennessee, and then 1 in East Tennessee.
So again, it's one of those opportunities to say, hey, look, we're going to this particular event, no one else is.
And grow the brand, baby.
No doubt about it. Coach, appreciate you being here. I know we'll be talking soon. Welcome back to WCS.
Thanks, Darrin.
Thank you for joining us this week. We'll see you next time on The Coach's Show.